Yes, you're a little low, but I can hear you.
So wait a minute. Let me check my sound. So can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all the participants joining us today. On behalf of Jadavpur Association of International Relations, JAIR, I extend my greetings to all our members, guests, students, and dignitaries. Today, we have the privilege of hosting an insightful session on Act East policy and India's security, a topic of critical importance in understanding India's strategic engagement with its eastern neighborhood and Indo-Pacific region. It is now my honor to introduce our esteemed speaker for the evening, Major General Alok Deb, Sena Medal, Vishishtha Seva Medal, Indian Army, retired. I'll briefly introduce Sir. Major General Alok Deb was commissioned into the Indian Army in June 1977, an alumnus of Defence Services Staff College, India. He holds an MSc in Defence Studies and two MPhil degrees on Defence and Strategic Studies. Over the course of his distinguished career, he has served in various prestigious positions, including an instructor at the Indian Military Academy and National Defence College, and as a brigade major of an infantry brigade. He has commanded artillery units in challenging terrains, including in Kargil War, where he was decorated for gallantry. As a Major General, he has commanded an artillery division on India's western borders. His final military assignment was a senior operational logistics staff in the Eastern Theatre, which included Northeast and the Myanmar. Post retirement, General Deb served as a Deputy Director General at the Manohar Parikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, engaging in research on security challenges in Indo-Pacific. He has lectured extensively in India and abroad, is widely published on security issues, and holds fellowships with leading strategic institutions. We are truly honored, sir, to have you share your expertise with us. Thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, Suchasmita, for the introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to be addressing such an erudite gathering today. This is my first interaction with Jadavpur University, a university which we have only heard about. And I thank Dr. Lahiri and Professor Dana for making this possible. Today, what I wish to convey in these 45 minutes is not the nuts and bolts of India's Act East policy. Neither is it the nuts and bolts of India's security. These are very, very vast subjects. I'm just going to give you a short perspective, and it is my perspective gleaned from various sources and then analyzed on my own. So it's quite likely that some of you may not agree with what I have to say, but I request you to hear me out. And this is the way I plan to cover this lecture. This is the topic, and Myanmar and actors outside the neighborhood. As far as geography, background, and relevance of Act East is concerned, you know this area better than me. All of you are research scholars and professors. Some of you are you're far more qualified than I am. The peninsular mass of India, going on to Bangladesh, going on to the Seven Sisters, on to Thailand, and on to the rest of Southeast Asia. More than the land mass, it is the maritime domain which gets some importance here, with the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea and the choke points of the states of Malacca, going on to the South China Sea with all the disputed islands and rocks in that infamous 9-dashed line. Given this is a map showing the sea routes between the ports of East India, basically Orissa and further south to our Southeast Asian countries. And this is in the early medieval period, which takes us to around 600 Christian era and going on to the late medieval era. And you can see the various routes which are there from all over, from India to Southeast Asia. This is another slide. This is from an encyclopedia, and this is in the later medieval period, 15th to 16th century. Again, we have various sea routes going down. The point I'm trying to make is that we had historical contact with Southeast Asia going back to the 3rd century AD. Kingdoms on our east coast established trade, cultural, and political relations with counterparts in Burma, Thailand, Indonesia, Malay Peninsula, Cambodia, and Vietnam. We have so many commonalities. I mean, there's too much to talk about it. Consider Angkor Wat in Cambodia, consider Borobudur in Indonesia, and consider the Batu Cave Temple of Lord Murugan in Malaysia. The reason for the post-independence dip in relations with certain countries like Thailand and Philippines going on to Southeast Asia Treaty Organization with the Americans, and the individual treaties of Japan and South Korea with the Americans, vis-a-vis our policy of non-alignment, which we held on to very steadfastly during the Cold War and even thereafter. Today too, we have some version of that. And it is in 1991-92 that thanks to our Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, we started looking eastwards again, then we liberalized and we reinvigorated our relations with Southeast Asia. Act East is aimed at promoting economic cooperation, cultural ties, and developing a strategic relationship with countries in the Indo-Pacific region with a proactive and pragmatic approach. This is what our Secretary East, Mr. Pereswamy Kumaran, we spoke about this in Jakarta on the 20th of June this year. And it involves intensive and continuous engagement with Southeast Asian countries in the field of connectivity, trade, culture, defense, and people to people. Contacts at the bilateral, regional, and multilateral levels, bolstering India's other initiatives like Sagar and Mahasagar. And such a strategic relationship obviously predicates one thing. It predicates major economic development of our Northeast. Importantly, we also have to consider further stepping up our developmental programs and collaborations with smaller countries like Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, and others. And while we have done a lot of work in this region, but traditionally we have been characterized as being slow and not following up on these development programs with the proactive approach that is required, something we continue to work on. And for better or for worse, this is our simpler, smaller, less costly version of Belt and Road. A few words on ASEAN. Situated bang in the center of the Indo-Pacific, connecting the Indian and Pacific Oceans, these are 10 nations which operate through consensus. They released a common outlook on the Indo-Pacific a couple of years ago. And this year, in 2025, they have released the ASEAN Political Security Community Blueprint. They have released the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint. They have released the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community Blueprint. The ASEAN 5, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, are projected to have a combined GDP of $3.48 trillion. Now, this is a community that works towards strategic multi-alignment, just like India. Member nations have disputes with China, individual disputes. They have disputes amongst themselves. But ASEAN has an FTA with China. It also has a comprehensive strategic partnership with the USA. India has multiple mechanisms in place with ASEAN, whether it is the ASEAN India Annual Summit, the ARF, the East Asia Summit, ASEAN Defense Ministers Plus. Unfortunately, our trade is not what we thought it would be. I think right now it's in the region of around $120 billion. What we had planned was to scale it up to $300 billion. The only bright spot here is Singapore. That is a major source of bilateral investment. So this year, of course, we're looking to review our FTA with ASEAN, and we'll have to wait to see what comes out of it. We have a good security relationship with all the members. We have maritime security dialogues with Philippines and Vietnam. We have naval exercises with Indonesia and Singapore. We have the defense ministers dialogue with Singapore, Vietnam, and Thailand. We have army exercises with Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. We have berthing facilities at Sabang, Singapore, and Penang. And we sell equipment like BrahMos to the Philippines, which is a very, very big deal. Recent operation deployments of our Navy include visit of 3 ships of our Eastern Naval Command to Da Nang in the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam on the 25th of July. We have cyber dialogues with Singapore, which were held in October last year. We have digital infrastructure cooperation with Malaysia, and ISRO even set up a telemetry tracking station in Brunei recently. Basic problem with ASEAN is trade, and this is something we have to leverage. We now come to our two immediate neighbors, Bangladesh and Myanmar. If one was to prioritize which of the two was more crucial to India, the vote would perforce go to Bangladesh for three reasons. One, Bangladesh's location makes it the number one priority because of the security implications to our northeast and the rest of India if things don't go well. At the same time, conversely, if things do go well, the economic and security gains that would accrue to both our countries are phenomenal. Thirdly, if we don't have Bangladesh with us, we lose much of our hard-won access to the northeast, which is the springboard for Act East. Myanmar only being the bridge between South and Southeast Asia. These are the dictates of geography, and it is vital for all of us to understand this. Unfortunately, some of us are in India. Quite a few of us are unable on an A4 sheet of paper to place our seven sisters relative to each other, marking them 1 to 7. So we have a lot to do in this regard. While there have been phenomenal steps toward development in the Northeast, even the sustainable development goals have come up quite a bit, but there's a long way to go. Here is some data on Bangladesh, which you already know. 4097 kilometers, Siliguri corridor, the borders with 5 states. There is no territorial dispute with India after the land boundary agreement. We left Teen Biga out of it because that was settled in 1974. It wasn't open later on. And we also accepted the arbitration of the Permanent Court of Arbitration on the maritime boundary. As far as boundaries are concerned, this is totally settled. Actually, amongst our immediate neighbors, the boundary here is settled. The boundary with the Chinese is not settled. The boundary with the Pakistanis is not settled. Even with Myanmar, there is a small bit where the India-China-Myanmar border meets, where the border has to be demarcated. But this boundary is crystal clear. Right. Now, last week, the interim government of Professor Yunus issued the July Declaration. This was on the anniversary of the toppling of the previous regime. Now, this document is available on open source, and many of us would have gone through it. It's got 28 paragraphs. In the first paragraph, there are just 5 lines about the Liberation War, which was actually the birth of Bangladesh. There are just 5 lines. Paras 2, 3, and 4 berate Sheikh Mujib, Bakshal, and the Awami League. There is no mention of Sheikh Mujib's assassination. Para 5 covers the coups and the counter coups till 1990, covering the period of General Ziaur Rahman and General Ashad. Paras 6 to 18 are a litany of complaints denigrating Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League. Paras 19 to 27 are about the current situation and the future. And para 28 says that this declaration reflects the aspirations of the people of Bangladesh. There is no mention of the country's achievements over the last 50 years. You will remember that next year, 2026, Bangladesh was to graduate from least developed country status to something else. Now, the only available critique of this declaration, which I could find, has been carried out by a British journalist called David Bergman, who has been studying this country for a few years. And he has written that this July Declaration replaces a politicized history with an even more politicized version. With a ban on the Awami League, with politicians, bureaucrats, and diplomats in hiding all over the world, this one-sided formulation, I suppose, was inevitable. We have also had a situation where students who have turned politicians have made statements saying that the spirit of 1971 is more or less over. It is subsumed in the spirit of 2024. Now, to arrive objectively at where it is heading, there are some statistics. I mean, we must know these things. They tell us what is the state on the ground. It may not be where the country is heading, but what is the state on ground today? Transparency International. From August to June this year, 121 people killed, 5189 injured, and surprisingly, extortion In Dhaka alone, at 53 locations, extortion 2.21 crore takas daily. This is quite surprising. 2.21 crores takas daily extortion, 53 locations in Dhaka. The Daily Star, which is quite a respected newspaper and that is no friend of Sheikh Hasina's. I remember Mahfouz Alam is their editor. She had filed 84 cases against him and he was running all over Bangladesh appearing in various courts. But he writes, the report that to prevent the erasure of history, some students, some freedom fighters, and some concerned citizens have formed an organization called Moncho 71 to ensure that the legacy of the liberation war is kept alive. On the 5th of August this year in Dhaka University, the Islamic Chhatra Shibir, which is the student arm of the Jamaat-e-Islami, they organized an exhibition where known collaborators of 1971, their photographs were put up, and some of them were convicted too. They were lauded. The university stayed silent, the government stayed silent. It is only when some leftist students protested that these photographs were taken down. We have, there are input from the Bangladesh Hindu Buddhist Christian Unity Council too. It documented 2184 incidents from August 24 to December 24 and 258 cases in the first half of 2025. 87 attacks on homes and businesses, cases of forcible occupation of property, etc. And there is a problem, there's a lot of misogyny going on. Person accused of sexually molesting a woman was arrested and put into prison in the jail, but a mob came outside and forced the police to release this man. When he was released, he was greeted with garlands and he was given copies of the Quran. And the complainant, the lady, was threatened with rape. So this is happening. There is a lot of misogyny, and Hifazat-e-Alam has also been leading these protests when they are trying to get back at the equal inheritance rights of women under Islamic law. South Asian Voices, in their article today, it says that over 3 lakh people affiliated with the Awami League face murder charges. No lawyer is prepared to defend them. And the author is a gentleman called Wahidu Zaman Noor. And Wahidu Zaman Noor says that the current government is taking more of an exclusionary view than an inclusive view. Now, one thing which we have all noticed, and we are constantly, when I say we, I mean India. India is constantly portrayed as an adversary, conspiring against Bangladesh since its inception. I mean, there was always a trend, but that was always under control. But this trend is now full blown. India is supposed to be responsible for the Sheikh Hasina's government failures. Even the July declaration, Para 6 says, I quote, domestic and external intrigue, thus laying the way in Bangladesh for the paramount power, domination, and fascism of Sheikh Hasina. One doesn't go into the burning of the Indira Gandhi Cultural Center, defacing of murals, and things like that. The scapegoating of India at times borders on the ridiculous. You are aware of this BBIN agreement, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal agreement, wherein trade is facilitated between our countries. And there was this power agreement signed in November last year, wherein 40 megawatts of power was to be sold by Nepal to Bangladesh, and we were taking the power onto our own grid at the border India-Nepal and transmitting it to Bangladesh from the border India-Bangladesh. Now, people in Bangladesh, in the media, it came out, they were very unhappy with India because India is charging higher rates and the cost per taka of a unit of electricity has gone up. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. And this is despite the fact that the amount of time, money, and resources that we as a country have invested in this Bangladesh, it is phenomenal. Some of you must have seen the website of the Ministry of External Affairs following Sheikh Hasina's last visit to India in June last year. The variety of agreements signed, the scope of those agreements is huge. And all this fragmented within 2 months. And the people who have gained from all this, unfortunately, are our friends Pakistan and China. Their economy, the ADB has downgraded the growth forecast to 3.9 for the current fiscal, down from 5.1 in its September outlook and down from 6.6 in its April outlook. It's India's largest trade partner in South Asia. Our trade has dropped substantially. In 23-24, it came down to $12.9 billion. Now it's gone up a bit to $13.46 billion. but earlier on in 22-23, it was $15.9 billion. And the fact is that they're dependent on us for so many things, and it's been a two-way traffic. Whether it is eggs, rice, daily products, even matchsticks, it all goes to Bangladesh. The time, money, and resources again giving to enhancing connectivity. There is an excellent paper published by the Center for Social and Economic Progress on the future of connectivity between these two countries, and the authors are Sushobit Chakravarti and Riya Sinha. Came out on the 7th of August, a very recent paper. They make a very pertinent observation. They say that recent developments have underscored the extent to which cross-border connectivity. Atendra is saying PowerPoint is not visible. I'm not showing the PowerPoint right now. I'm just speaking. Recent developments have underscored the extent to which cross-border connectivity and economic integration in South Asia remains highly susceptible, can be compromised when bilateral political trust is eroded. Almost all connectivity projects have been suspended. The Maitri Express has been suspended. Luckily, the freight trains are running. Sabroom SEZ remains only on paper. So into this vacuum have come Pakistan and China. You will recall that the first visit of Dr. Yunus was to China when he signed an agreement on economic and technological cooperation. They have strengthened their comprehensive strategic economic partnership. Bangladesh secured commitments of $2.1 billion investments, and 30 companies have pledged to invest in a special China economic industrial zone. And this is a substantial increase from what Sheikh Hasina was able to get on her last trip in July 24, where she got only $137 million. Yunus also discussed repatriation of Rohingyas, medical tourism to Kunming, management of the Teesta Basin. You already know that 100% of their goods are duty-free in China. Incidentally, about 74% of their weapons are also from China. China supplied them 2 diesel submarines. They are now near Cox's Bazar in this place called BNS Pekua. It was earlier called BNS Sheikh Hasina. They've changed the name. However, there is no evidence that China has encouraged the July Revolution. And what we, as researchers, what little one can make out, India has never been in competition with China in Bangladesh. We have each played to our own strengths. In India's case, in our case, it was unmatched soft power. Unmatched soft power, some benevolence, and mutually beneficial trade for strategic and humanitarian reasons. Howsoever Bangladesh might have construed it. I mean, elements in Bangladesh might have construed it. Unmatched soft power, some benevolence, and mutually beneficial trade for strategic and humanitarian reasons. China's is purely strategic and business oriented. The Pakistani Foreign Minister, come Deputy PM Ishaq Dar, is visiting Bangladesh this month. This is following the Foreign Secretary Amna Baloch's visit in April. Direct trade with Chittagong is resumed after 53 years. This is the same port where in 2024, around 1,500 boxes of Chinese ammunition sent by the ICI, by the Inter-Services Intelligence for ULFA, were intercepted by Sheikh Hasina's government. It was costing $5 to $7 million, 2004. The ships are participating in Pakistani maritime exercises. They had this exercise called Aman 2025 recently. They've shown interest in acquiring some more JF-17 Thunder fighter jets, jointly developed by China and Pakistan. Now, with the history of coups, Bangladesh's armed forces have generally been kept happy by the government. And thus far, the Bangladesh army has refrained from making any anti-India noises, though they also have a strong Islamic bent of mind, some of their officers. There has been virtual online interaction between our Chief General Dwivedi and their Chief General Wakar. Also, the army stand on the so-called humanitarian corridor, which was to be made towards Myanmar. That stand has been appreciated, I think, by everyone who is interested in the security of Bangladesh. However, they have been high-level visited by Bangladeshi generals to Pakistan. Reciprocal visits by ISI officials who even went to Rangpur, I think, in January this year. Again, in July this year, there's speculation about 3 Pakistani officers who came with fresh passports. That is, passport issued specifically for this reason. And they went to Ramu Cant near Cox's Bazar. They spent a few days there and they went back. Now, this has to be read with the Pakistani military's professed intent when their spokesman says, when he gave an interview to The Economist, he says regarding India that we will start from the east. India also needs to understand that they can be hit everywhere. And in this context, I want to remind you that Bangladesh has got 10 infantry divisions. Why they have 10 infantry divisions, it is really something which only they can answer. And while there is something called as professed intent, what we have to look at is the capability. The capability of 10 infantry divisions is quite a bit. Where it goes, how it is employed, is for them to decide. And this becomes important when excitable veterans, for whatever reasons, talk about capturing the entire Northeast to assist Pakistan in case of an India-Pakistan war. One old general did that in May 2025, and it caused quite a flutter. Events like this and the visit of the Chinese to Lanmonenhat, where there is talk of Chinese helping them reactivate that airfield for whatever reason. But if Chinese surveillance assets are put there, it's going to be big no-no for all of us. One scenario is of Bangladesh exploiting our liabilities using sleeper cells of illegal immigrants or Rohingyas to stoke internal turmoil, disrupting our social cohesion. It is unlikely that, I mean, they are not the Mossad, they're not going to be employed en masse the way some of us think it is. But in case of a collusion of Bangladesh, Pakistan, and China, which the Bangladeshis deny today, it is possible that they could tie down our forces in certain area like the Siliguri colony. To conclude, it is fair to say that the underlying fault lines arising from Bangladesh's conflict with identity will continue to influence its relations with India. And this will manifest in various ways. There will be diplomatic pinpricks, there will be some bravado, there will be some political rhetoric, and there might be some calculated mischief. While fundamentalists have greater visibility, one hopes that the forces that participated in 71, other than the Awami League, will be able to resist this when elections come. As you know, in a recent survey, 48.5% people have not yet decided whom they want to vote for. And the other thing is that India remains very strongly in their mind. Unlike China or Pakistan, which figures off and on in their media, we figure every day. And that acceptance of India's importance actually is our strength. Despite Dhaka's often publicized list of grievances that do not appreciate our constraints and sensitivities, we need to wait for an elected government and then start rebuilding relations in small ways, step by step. Possibly strategic patience is the key. Right. We now come to another country, Myanmar. Unlike Bangladesh, which figures in discussions in Indian media and society, Myanmar remains peripheral to most Indians, mostly because it is even further and it has a cocktail of ethnicities and languages and a minimum Indian footprint. Around 2.5 million people of Indian origin out of a total population of 55 million, that is less than 5%. This is from the website of the Indian Embassy in Yangon. This is a far cry from the time when Indians dominated the civil services, education, trade, and commerce in the British rule. Possibly because of this, an anti-India bias set in. And in the 1950s, under Prime Minister U Nu, the first expulsion of India started, and this continued in the 60s under General Nee Win. And this despite the existence of a India-Burma Friendship Treaty signed in 1951. This despite the personal rapport between Jawaharlal Nehru and U Nu, between Jawaharlal Nehru and Aung San. And Mrs. Indira Gandhi, when she was just the Prime Minister's daughter, supposed to have been a state guest at Nee Win's house. Some data, over 4 times the size of Bangladesh. It's around the size of Texas, maybe slightly smaller. 5 nations, 1643 kilometers with 4 states. Manipur and Mizoram are, Arunachal of course is mostly hilly and there's not too much happening there, but Manipur and Mizoram and Nagaland. This 10 kilometers of border fencing has been going on for a long time, more or less stalled. Some other projects are going on. The religious mix, the ethnic mix, this is the ethnic cocktail, 135 indigenous ethnic groups, over 100 languages, 25 ethnic armed groups, people defense forces, and a civil war raging since 2021, the military junta versus the National Unity Government. As policy, India has been consistent in supporting all governments in Myanmar. though there have been murmurs of sympathy for democratic forces. With our look east in 1991, trade increased. Also, some operations against rebels in the northeast. Two notable things happened. There was a case in 2015 when 18 Indian soldiers were ambushed by members of the NSC and Khaplang group, National Socialist Council of Nagaland Khaplang, and they had a camp across the border. So the Myanmar government was informed, and our guys went across, and we were able to destroy that camp. Of course, the government was informed in advance, as I said. The second one was Operation Sunrise in 2019, May 2019. This was coordinated on both sides of the border by our special forces, their forces, where we removed some terrorist activities. Now we come on to the time of Aung San Suu Kyi from 2012. Her aura has gradually evaporated with her endorsement of the junta's rule and its policy of ethnic cleansing against the Rohingya. And this is something she defended in the International Court of Justice when the case was filed against Myanmar by the Gambia. And for this, I think the amount of opprobrium she earned, she actually, the Nobel Prize she got, the entire reputation of her has been pursued. Then came the coup of February 21, when the State Administrative Council under General Min Aung Hlaing declared the emergency. You've seen the data of the ethnic armed groups and the people defense forces. These are all working under the shadow National Unity Government. Okay, please see the next slide. This is a slide by the BBC, the research as of 13th of November 2024. The light green is contested. The shaded is totally under the control of multiple resistance groups and ethnic armies. The military has got the dark green patches. As you can see, most of the border with India definitely either Arakan army or contested with various Chin and other groups. With China, you have the militant groups in the Yunnan border, in Kachin and in Shan. In Shan, probably the entire lot is militant. But the military controls key urban areas, including the largest city, Yangon. Now, if you see this again in most of the Indo-Myanmar border is under full control of the Arakan army, and it operates out of Rakhine with certain Chin groups. Again, you see this. This is now converted into data. All of Myanmar, the military controls only 21%, contested 29%, resistant groups 42%. So 42 plus 29 comes to 61. Or does it come to 71? It comes to 71. Urban areas, the military's got a strong role, which is why the junta is surviving. This data, as I said, from February, November 2024, about 14,000 village groups are surveyed. The military controls less territory than it ever did since 1962. Now, since 2021, the Tamador's excesses have resulted in China seeking Chins, the Chin refugees seeking refuge in Mizoram and Manipur. These have raised legitimate security concerns in India. There is no flesh influx into Mizoram in July because of fighting between rival Chin factions. Now, the center has realized the importance of local sentiments in Mizoram. If you go back to the time of the coup, when the Chin started coming into Mizoram and Manipur, then the government of India had said that please don't take any refugees, send them back. And that is when the Mizoram state government said, no, they are Ketetkin, we cannot send them back. Government of India accepted that viewpoint. Now it is making steps to rationalize this in a manner that the security risk is reduced by carrying out biometric identification of all these refugees. So there are about close to 40,000 out there. 32,000 is what some papers say, but it could be close to 40,000. They have managed to do just about 8 to 9,000 so far. It's a long process. The state government is providing refuge to these people, and various NGOs, they're providing them food and shelter and education. That's the way it is happening. This hopefully will stabilize the security situation in Mizoram for some time. The difference in attitude between the Mizoram government and the Manipur government is a subject of discussion all by itself for various reasons, as some of you are aware, as is the matter of the free movement regime. The free movement regime, if you remember, right from the beginning, I think it used to be 40 kilometers. For 40 kilometers on either side of the border, you could travel. It came down to 16 kilometers. During COVID, it was stopped altogether. After COVID too, it was stopped for a long time because the coup started. Now we have opened it. We used to have 43 entrance points. Now we have only 22 entrance points. They're called gates, and they're in all four states. I think two in Arunachal and 5 distribution is there. And now the FMR is just 7 days. You can go across with the pass for 7 days and come back to the same gate. And that has to some extent diffused tensions. Though the Naga organizations are asking for a full restoration, they're also asking for stoppage of the border fencing in Manipur. As I said earlier, the border fencing in Manipur, it is 10 kilometers. It really hasn't progressed much because the terrain isn't very good and there's tremendous local opposition there. I remember a delegation of Manipuri Nagas and ethnic people from the tribal areas would come to Delhi, and I had a meeting with them, and they were going to the Ministry of Home Affairs to press their case. So more or less now, I think the government has decided on a hybrid surveillance mode, where it may not be physically fenced, but they will be monitored. But that is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. We now come to the Arakan Army and Kaladan. As shown in the previous slide, the Arakan Army is the major force in Rakhine, and it controls 14 of the 17 townships there. Rakhine is important to India. It is important to China. It is also important to Bangladesh for different reasons. With the regime change in Bangladesh, so Chittagong is out of the reckoning now. Sheikh Hasina had offered us the use of this port, but now we are not able to utilize it. So we go back to our old Kaladan multimodal transit transport. This agreement was signed in 2008 by our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, and his Bangladesh counterpart. The framework agreement. And the distances are there. This is a map of the donor ministry. 539 kilometers to Sitwe. Sitwe is a port which is managed by India Ports Global. It's an Indian company. Incidentally, India Ports Global also manages Chabahar. It manages not Chabahar, but the Shahid Behesti terminal, which has been given to India. So it's a company which is managing both Sitwe as well as Chabahar on either sides of India. From Sitwe, you go across the barges onto the Kaladan River. This is supposed to be, if you see some old website, this is supposed to have been a very luxury cruise, a very pleasant cruise. And now it is going through a lot of conflicted areas. And then from Paletwa is in Chin State. Paletwa to Zorinpui, you go by road. So Zorinpui is just inside Mizoram. This is not complete. I happen to have read a detailed project report of this Paletwa Zorinpui road some years back. While the prognosis in terms of the amount of traffic it can sustain was not very encouraging, but that was a project report of some years ago. Probably what we are making now, we are going to see capability of carrying far more traffic as and when we are able to complete this. Rest from Zorinpui to Longta, it's 100 kilometers. This is, I think it's already been connected. I think some of you might know better about this. As of December 2024, Bangladesh sources report that the Arakan Army has taken over the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. Now, some Rohingyas have been conscripted by the junta to fight the Arakan Army, and many Rohingyas, out of fear, have now crossed over again after Operation 1027. Operation 1027 was that operation when the three groups, the Tang National Army, the Myanmar National Democratic Army Alliance, and the third one was the Arakan Army. All three came to treaty, and they carried out a lot of operations and put the junta under a lot of pressure. Now, after 1027, a lot of these Rohingyas have come across again. Also, there are reports of cooperation between Chin rebels in the Chittagong Hill Tracts under the banner of the Kuki Chin National Front and their ethnic counterparts in Chin State. The Kuki Chin National Front, if you remember, you go back to the history of the Shanti Bahini. The Shanti Bahini and the government of Bangladesh had a peace treaty in 1997. However, things have generally been simmering since then. The indigenous people have got tremendous grievances even today. And there have been incidences after the change of government also. So the Kuki Chin National Front and their ethnic counterparts in Chin State, they are collaborating. And some writers in Bangladesh are worried about the Arakan army having an ambition to create Greater Arakan. Greater Arakan apparently includes Chittagong. However, personally, I really don't know whether the Arakan army is looking that far ahead. Right now, it is only managing. I think it wants to make some sort of a quasi-independent state in Arakan, and for that reason, it is now fighting the junta. Uh, the as far as the Aladan project and the Rohingyas, the Arakan army is concerned, the Arakan army is quite happy to deal with us because they know that India is investing a lot of money, and whoever controls that area is going to get benefits. So while Government of India has recently talked about a meeting about which I'll cover later, the Mizo state government has always been interacting with them, and this is how we were able to get our engineers released. There was one case of kidnapping where 5 Indian engineers were kidnapped from that road project. One of them had a heart attack and he died. The Arakan army gave up the rest. So they are not interested in a confrontation with us now because they know that this is going to help them and help us in terms of their needs. However, as far as the Rohingyas are concerned, there is no solution as of now. Earlier this year, Bangladesh and Myanmar had come to an agreement, I think in March this year, that 180,000 Rohingyas who have been identified as genuine will be taken back into Myanmar. So this was hailed as quite a big achievement, and all of us are quite happy about it. But the Arakan army put a spoke in the wheel. They did not permit this to happen. Now, this has given a fillip again to Rohingya militancy. You know about the Rohingya, the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. The head of that is a gentleman whose parents moved from Myanmar to Bangladesh to India to Pakistan. This fellow was born in Karachi and he did his studies in a madrasa in Saudi Arabia. He heads the ARSA. This, along with the Rohingya Solidarity Organization, is carrying out recruitment in camps, it's carrying out gun running, it's carrying out drugs, it's carrying out trafficking. And in case it comes under the umbrella of the global jihad, we are going to have major problems with a lot of Rohingyas in our country. This is a genuine problem. We have to look at it very objectively. We have to look at it very objectively and we have to find ways to manage a population without upsetting the entire lot of people. But this is a genuine security problem. This morning there is news that Malaysia, this morning's news that Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand, 4 countries are planning to send a joint delegation to Myanmar for talks on the Rohingya. And this is an outcome of uh, Chief Advisor Yunus's ongoing visit to Malaysia. And this is a news from, I think, Bangladesh papers this morning. Other thing about the Arakan army right now is that the state of emergency is going to be lifted in December, has been lifted, and elections are going to be held in Myanmar in December. It is unlikely that the Arakan army is going to support this election process. So then, what does China have to say? It has a 2,129 border between Yunnan and Kachin and Shan states. History has many twists and turns. When the Kuomintang was defeated by the Red Army, many in the Kuomintang came across south from Yunnan into Kachin state. Some of them settled there. And to keep a balance there, the Chinese started supporting the Communist Party of Burma. The Communist Party of Burma had cadres, and from that emerged the United Wa State Army, which aimed to create an autonomous Wa state. Now, the Chinese interests in Myanmar range from border security, obviously, protecting its huge investments and exploiting Myanmar's reserves of mineral, oil, and gas. And there is something which is not very well known. As per a Stimson report of June 2025, Kachin state in Myanmar is China's most important rare earth supplier. Value-wise, it accounts for 60% of Chinese imports. Value-wise, it's not quantity-wise. There's 17 rare earths. Out of that, some may be more valuable than others. Value-wise, 60% of China's imports of rare earths come from Kachin state, Myanmar. Obviously, China would like to prevent any outside powers from coming inside this, gaining influence. Therefore, it is chary of supporting the NUG. It would like to continue with the junta as far as possible. Now, to obtain access to the Bay of Bengal, you know about the China-Myanmar economic corridor. Chokfu has been leased to China. There are certain reports starting from 2023 that say that even Russian oil has been used, the CMAC has been used to transport Russian oil into Yunnan. So Myanmar, in any case, is a member of the BRI, so China has a lot of interests out here. China was unhappy with the coup due to concerns over the investments and General Leng's known anti-China stance. And this became apparent when in March, April 2021, Chinese businesses, Chinese shops were attacked. You would have read about those things. There was resentment over his resentment over his inability to crack down on the cyber scam centers operating on the border, which were cleared in the aftermath of Operation 1027. 1027 means 27th October by rebel forces. So China gave them a go-ahead to go and clear those scam centers because the junta couldn't do it. However, like India, China too has kept a balance. It has not tried to ever overthrow the government of Myanmar. It has played both sides. By mid-2024, when the important town of Lashio in east central Myanmar was captured by the rebels, China realized that things were getting dire for the junta. So what did it do? It supplied them with 6 fighter jets, supplied them with other equipment to slow down the advance of to increase the firepower of the junta and slow down the advance of the rebels. The junta does what it is doing. They're all reading the papers, so they were successful. So Lashio will be captured. In January this year, China mediated a ceasefire between the regime and one of the constituents of the Three Reserve Alliance. I told you the three of them, the Arakan Army, the Tang National Army, and the MNDAA. So China mediated a ceasefire between the junta and the MNDAA. But this is a reprieve. It's a temporary reprieve. The civil war will go on, and China will continue to balance sides. And there's, as I said, there is no evidence that it really supports regime change. We now come to another very interesting state, the United States of India, United States of America. As regards the USA, I shall start with a very commonly accepted narrative, which we have all heard and which more or less was the form till maybe a couple of months ago. I'll just read out the United States Indo-Pacific strategy placed India as the one country in the region that had the potential to maintain a balance while managing or resisting Chinese behavior in the Indian Ocean. According, the US felt that India could be encouraged to play a larger role in providing regional security. This would reduce concerns about American hegemony, at the same time balance out Chinese influence to a degree. All this was founded on the hard work of a number of administrations from the early 2000s, starting from the Probe, Talbot, and Jeswant talks, which continued for a long time. So what happened in 2024? Did the US actively encourage regime change, or did it just fan the flames of what was essentially an indigenous protest movement? Now I'm showing you a slide by an Indian scholar. Please read this. Okay, this is what I've already read out, sorry. This is the slide. 3 major explanations capture the rationale behind the US intervention in Bangladesh, which led to a regime change. First, the growing strategic interest of the USA in Asia, particularly South Asia, in connection with its rivalry with China. Second, the promotion of its hegemonistic culture to assert American exceptionalism and the triumph of liberalism. And third, the advancement of its strategic interests to a regime change policy for countries that do not align with American goals. Bangladesh under Sheikh Hasina's rule met all 3 of these conditions. The country holds critical geopolitical significance for the USA, highlighted in the US Relations Act Sheet 2012, as its location serves as a gateway to South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Bay of Bengal. Similarly, the Congressional Research Service report 2017 emphasized Bangladesh's importance to both South Asia and the geopolitical dynamics of Asia. This is the paper interrogating political crisis in Bangladesh, limited democracy, Islamization of polity and external power politics is by a gentleman called Anshuman Behra, who works in the National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bangalore. He published this in the Journal of World Affairs, Voice of the Global South, very recently. Now, US-Bangladesh relations were frosty in the latter half of 2023. You will remember when Sheikh Hasina and President Biden came for the G20 to Delhi. Then there were talk that Prime Minister Modi himself spoke to President Biden, asking him to accommodate Bangladesh in whatever form. And they had this famous selfie where three of them were there. Then she flees to India, and a personal friend of the Clintons, Professor Yunus, arrives. A pro-West dispensation is in place in the sense that when you see the bios of all the advisors, many of them have connections with America. Whether it is a former American now, whether it is a former American ambassador who was the ambassador during the regime change, he is now a strategic advisor to the firm, and he makes frequent trips to Bangladesh. Whether it is military exercises between the US National Guard and Bangladesh para commandos, which happened recently, or reduction of tariffs, they've got 20%. The US focus on Bangladesh is apparent. I take your attention to an article published by two Bangladeshis in a magazine. It's called the US Naval Institute. It's online. The US Naval Institute. It argues how useful Bangladesh could be in a future conflict with its strategic position. They say Rakhine is next door, Malacca states are close by, Bego Karshe is far, far away. In the Bay of Bengal, Bangladesh could provide logistic support to US forces, assist in rearming, recuperating, offer the facilities of Madarbari, which is under construction. They even talked about basing ships there to possibly blockade Chinese shipments coming out from Kyofu. They also said that US forces could keep an eye on Myanmar, surveil Chinese activity up to Yunnan. Maybe Sheikh Hasina had a point after all, we don't know. So is Bangladesh going to become an arena of great power rivalry? Or will its interim policy, if you remember, the earlier policy was friendship towards all and malice towards none. Is it going to be friendship with all, malice in part towards India? We don't know. We have to wait and see. We have to wait for the forces of 1971 to reassert themselves. In Myanmar, there were reports of Western mercenaries, special forces operatives fighting there for the National Unity Government. In December 2022, President Biden also passed the Burma Act to support the people of Burma in the struggle for democracy, freedom, and justice. The Burma Act calls for supporting the National Unity Government and providing non-lethal assistance to ethnic armed organizations. However, in July this year, the Trump administration lifted sanctions on companies supplying weapons to the junta or providing raw materials and supplies for domestic weapons production. After President Trump's tariff threat, General Lang wrote to him about the tariffs, at the same time praising him for shutting down various liberal US-funded outlets that were covering the Myanmar conflict and leaning towards what the National Unity Government was doing. After a few days, it is seen the US lifted sanctions on several allies of Myanmar generals and the military companies. Towards this end, with this sort of a in July this year also, the Trump administration lifted sanctions on companies supplying weapons to the junta or providing raw materials and supplies for domestic production of weapons and ammunition. There are also reports of those same rare earths in Kachin state being used as leverage. There are thoughts about this and how the US would have to deal with either the Kachins or with the junta and how these minerals will be taken out. However, the issue is drawing the ire of China on this matter. And therefore, Myanmar's hobnobbing with the USA is a short-term tactical maneuver. Can it afford even to ignore the dictates of geography? So this sort of a geopolitical contestation is what is happening between the USA and China in the Northeast and our neighbors today. Right. Now, this brings me, what does India do? India's options vis-a-vis Bangladesh have been discussed earlier. As regards Myanmar, our requirements is firstly a secure border. This means continued interaction with whichever group controls the border and preventing movement of the internally displaced. While fencing the border is a long exercise, utilizing the FMR and its commissariat is a good idea. Equally necessary is the need to develop a uniform policy about Myanmar between the states and the center, despite political differences. And we must also ensure that whoever controls the area must guarantee protection of the Kaladan project. I forgot to mention that last year in November, there was this seminar carried out when the government of India carried out an outreach to the junta as well as to the rebels, and both were called centrally to the ICWA. This was reported initially by Reuters and later it came out in Indian media. However, that meeting did take place, but not in the way it was planned. One party went to ICWA and the other party went to Myanmar, went to the Ministry of Home Affairs. So one party went to the MHA, one party went to ICWA. The meeting happened. And some inputs were taken and some inputs were given. And this is the first time that Government of India has actually carried out this outreach. Earlier, it was the Mizoram government doing it, and the Rajya Sabha MPs from Mizoram, the gentleman who went across and was speaking to the Arakan army and getting a lot of things facilitated. So we hope that this interaction continues. Similarly, the India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral, up till Moreh to Kaliva, it was ready from Manipur to Kaliva. Our ambassador, our ambassador has just gone there the other day to see the progress from Kaliva onwards. We have to keep at it because this is something, otherwise, how do we go from Kolkata to Bangkok? We have to see. As regards the rest of the world, well, you were in a sweet spot 2 years ago with the G20. The world is a very different place now. We are reassessing our ties, but unlike WhatsApp University, we are a leading power. We are a regional power, and we are going to achieve our destiny whatever time it takes. We are not a pushover. And if we are a leading power, if we are a regional power, we do not swing like a pendulum from one side to the other. So we are going to be assessing our options very carefully. 15th of August is our Independence Day, and 15th of August, the time difference must be 12 hours plus, 12 to 14 hours. There's a meeting in Alaska, which is, I'm sure, going to have a bearing on something or the other. So we have to wait and see how things go. I'll end the lecture now. Thank you for listening. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening and thought provoking presentation. We will now open the floor for questions from the audience. Please type your questions in the chat box or raise a hand to speak.
So, Suchishmita, will you ask Debanjan or should I ask him what his question is?
No, no, sir. You can continue, sir. Devanjan, please ask your question to sir. Introduce yourself and please ask your question to sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Suchishmita. First of all, I would like to really express my gratitude to our Jadavpur University, IR department, and JAIR for this wonderful presentation. And I also would like to express my gratitude to Major General Sir for this wonderful presentation. Thank you to both. And sir, my question is that number one, I have two questions actually. My first question is, sir, do you think India's domestic political considerations might impact our policy towards our neighbors? Like in particular, this case is Bangladesh, number one. And number two, sir, do you think there should be a balance between security and other economic considerations? So when it comes to our policy with Act East. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Both questions are valid. Both questions are valid. Now, I will request you to appreciate one issue. We are a multilingual, multi-religious, multi-ethnic nation. So, as far as in addition, we are a federation of states. So there are layers upon layers upon layers of various types of ties, tensions, what it means to be an Indian. We are still discovering ourselves. People are writing books about it. So today I can say something on this group today and create tensions. Anyone can do it. This is where maturity in handling ourselves as individuals and seeing the larger good of the country comes in. And to that extent, let us see where things go, because there is no doubt as to leave aside politics. We will not discuss politics here, but there is always scope for dissent. See what's happening in America today. See what's happening in Europe today. I mean, is there one country which is free from dissent? Is there one country which is free? Maybe even Singapore, a city state, has got problems between Tamils and Malays and Chinese. So if I doubt if there is any country which is free from this sort of a thing where policies don't impact ethnic groups and religious groups. So this is an ongoing process. There is no clear answer to it. We live with it. We only ensure that we have to get maturity. As far as the second question is concerned, yes, development, the balance between security and development. I understand I'm speaking to Jadavpur, and I'm very conscious that I must choose my words very carefully. But see, I am a security man. I'm learning about development and other things from people like you. And development is essential, but you can't have development if you don't have a modicum of security. Now, where the balance lies is for policymakers to decide. But as I told you, if you have 10 divisions of the Bangladesh army on your doorstep, what they are doing, we don't know. But they have a capability. So if I do not analyze that capability and tell you, then am I doing my job or am I failing you? So that the answer lies somewhere there. I don't know how satisfactory my answer is. Anyone else, please?
Are there any more questions?
Right. There's a question from Manali Maulik. Sir, is the rare earths? One sec. What does it say? Can you please read out your question, please?
Sir, should I read it out?
Yeah, please give out your question. I can't read the full question here.
Yeah, so the question, Sir Monali Moulik is asking, is there rare earth politics of China about Myanmar becoming a concerning issue in South Asia?
No, I don't think so, because I really don't think so, because China has kept it very guarded. I don't know how many of us in India also knew about Myanmar's rare earths. I mean, very few people actually know about rare earths in Myanmar. The Chinese know about it because the Chinese are interested. They've got a monopoly on rare earths, more or less, on the processing, on the refining, on the production of the magnets. So the Chinese obviously have been doing a lot of research on rare earths. We are doing research in our own area. We are coming up with things, but it's taking us time. I'm not too sure whether it's a major issue. It is for the government in Myanmar and how much they want to give to the Chinese and what they're getting in return. I think it is their issue. I don't think it become an issue. As far as the Americans are concerned, we have to wait and see how it's going, because things with America are changing so fast that it's not wise to make a prediction. I think the Singaporean Prime Minister spoke the other day, and this might be of interest to you. I think what he said is that America may not be reliable, but America is indispensable. I don't know whether any of you heard the statement. I heard it just the other day. So what those fellows are doing, I really can't say, but I don't think we have a hand in all this. So whatever happens is going to happen between the Chinese and the junta, the government in power.
Thank you, sir. Are there any more questions? So I think that is the end of the questions for everyone. I don't think anyone has any other questions. So I would like to thank you on behalf of JAIR. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to you, sir, for taking out the time to join us and sharing your deep insights on the subject that holds immense relevance for India's foreign and security policy. We look forward to welcoming you to our future lectures and discussions. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your kind words, Suchismita. I only hope that I could make some sense out of the
Yes, sir.
entire thing. So thank you so much. Take care and best wishes,
Thank
because
you.
all of you are the future of India. So when I speak to the future of India, I feel invigorated. God bless you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.